it really all came together. Hi there, welcome back to my channel La Fraise. I'm Noémie, I'm a student in costume making in Brussels, and this week I wanted to chat to you about a wedding dress I'm currently making. So to make things clear, I'm making a wedding dress, but not like the dress of the actual wedding day. This is the dress for the dinner before the wedding. So the wedding's eve dress, basically. But it is a fancy white dress, so I think that I can shorten it and say wedding dress. I am making this for a friend, and at this point now I have made toile 1 and toile 2, and we've had 2 fittings with the 2 toiles, and so I'm ready to cut into the proper fabric. So I thought it's really high time for me to catch up on everything that's happened so that I don't have to do the whole story at the end of the dress. We've had the second fitting on Saturday. We are today Tuesday, and the dress needs to be delivered Saturday, not this week but next week. So I have a short 2 weeks to get it all coming together. Okay, I'm going to try to be organized in everything I have to say in what happened with the dress. So my friend came for first like being measured and talking about what she wanted. She had quite a few ideas, but what was the main point was that she wanted a 50s dress with a poofy skirt, so I translated that into a circle skirt. So the skirt was going to be the easy part because I knew it was going to be a circle skirt. But then we were looking at the tops and we looked at many options, and I think it was a bit overwhelming because I was kind of like, everything's possible, and so I sent her so many patterns and she had to decide what she wanted. In the end, she decided for the Lisa bodice from Charm Pattern, which is the brand from Gertie, and it was actually a perfect pattern because actually we saw that this pattern was inspired from, I'm going to read it to not say the wrong thing. This pattern was inspired by Grace Kelly's dress in Rear Window, and actually this photo of Grace Kelly in that movie is a photo that she had originally sent me as inspiration of what she would like. So it kind of came full circle because she wanted something a bit like that dress, and this pattern is inspired by that dress. So I was like, perfect, match made in heaven, we are on a roll. So after measuring her, I went ahead and I did a Lisa bodice with the 3 circle skirts that Charm Pattern have. They have a circle skirt and a double circle skirt, and with the poof that we needed, the circle skirt was fine enough, and obviously the double circle skirt uses a lot more fabric, so it was bringing the price up quite a bit. And also I said I am not making a petticoat, so that this would be something she would need to buy separately. I mean, I've never made a petticoat, I'm not against making one day, but I didn't want to discover petticoat making with her because it was too much risk for an important occasion. So the circle skirt, that was easy because it was a free pattern, so I could just get it off Gertie's website. But then the Lisa bodice was actually a Patreon only pattern. So what I did is that I couldn't just buy the pattern, but what I did is that I registered on Gertie's Patreon for 1 month and I downloaded the pattern from Patreon. So I was like, well, I paid €9.50 plus taxes, so €11.50 for the pattern through being a patron for 1 month, and I think €11.50 is a fair price to pay for a pattern. So I was like, well, I was patron for 1 month, and yeah, I guess it's not controversial to become patron for 1 month to get the pattern you want. And then anyway, that's what I did. And so I made the first toile, and as you saw, this took a while, not really making the toile, but first I had never used the projector, so I needed to spend a bit of time understanding how the projector worked. I wanted to use the projector to save cost for my friend because obviously the fabric is already a bit expensive. I need to talk about that, and then there's notions and everything, and so I didn't want to add to the cost. So I decided to use the projector, but so I had to figure out how to use the projector, and then to make the toile I had to iron meters of bed sheets. I needed to use 3 bed sheets to make this toile. And then, yeah, finally, all was in order. I cut everything. But so if you watched the video that came out early May about how much I can sew in a week, you can see me battling through making this first toile. It was mostly stress, obviously, mostly nerves of being worried, what if it doesn't turn out and everything. But obviously, a first toile, it's low stakes and it's fine. When my friend came to try it on, first, it wasn't the right size. I clearly mismeasured her the first time she came because I actually had 3 centimeters too much at the waist. So to correct the waist and have that fit, but keep the cup fine, which was the right size, I went down one size and up one cup size. And that fitted her perfectly on the second fitting. And what we also saw, and that's a bit weird, Gertie's pattern, when you put it on, actually covers your shoulder. I will put photos so that you can see, but the neckline kind of like comes on the shoulder, but the line drawing clearly shows something off the shoulder, and the dress from Grace Kelly is off the shoulder, and some of the photos are off the shoulders and some are on the shoulder. And I think for the off the shoulders photos, they just pushed it off. But it's in a black fabric and you can't see anything. But here, we on a white fabric, like it's going to show if she has to push the shoulders off. It like created a lot of bunching around the arm area. So that was not working. So I was really like, what do I do? Because if you pushed it off the shoulder, then you would have to correct the darts that were no longer pointing to the right apex anymore, because it would shift everything down. You had way too much bunching at the underarm area. It was really many things that were not working well. But so what I ended up doing is, so first change the size as I mentioned, but then I just actually took the pattern and I followed the neckline, and I chopped all the sleeve, and I chopped everything that was extra here. So I think I chopped an entire 3 centimeters to bring this off the shoulder. And so that brought me to my second toile, which was a lot better, fitted a lot better, and was much closer to what we needed. Yesterday, I took my projector back out. I projected everything onto tracing paper, because to cut the final thing, I don't want to do it with the projector. Anyway, I needed to mark the modification on the final pattern, which at some point I will be comfortable to do on the projector, but at this point I'm way too early on in my projector journey to want to do such a high stake project on it. So I reprojected the pattern onto tracing paper. I traced the pattern. What I need to do this afternoon is kind of remeasure everything and checking that the pattern I have, the final one here, matches the last toile, because I didn't want to take the last toile apart and use that as a pattern for reasons. But in any case, I'll remeasure everything and make sure that it all works. And then once everything's measured, this afternoon I am cutting the proper fabric. And yeah, and then I'm starting to sew. And I have a week and a half to make this dress happen, which is going to be fine. The full toile, the second time I just did the body, so it doesn't really count, but the full toile that I made, okay, it didn't have any of the special, finishing or anything. It's not hemmed, everything, but it took 2/3 of a day. So I feel like the full dress with all the bells and whistles, that should be fine in a week and a half. Now, for the fabric, and you'll see that the fabric choice is going to affect the constructions a little bit. So the fabric, she chose a cotton satin for the top, and there was also a viscose satin in the store, which was a lot more expensive, but happily she was good with the cotton satin. The white was matching the white of the other fabric she chose a lot better, so that's why she went for that one. But thank God, because we needed a lot of it, and the price of the viscose satin was very expensive. So she got cotton satin, and then she got a lace to put on the skirt. So it's going to be a lacy skirt over a white fabric. Originally, while we were in the store, I was like, oh yeah, what I'll do is I'll just fuse the lace and the cotton satin together and use them as one layer and hem them together and everything. I just want to clarify, because I say fuse, but what I mean is just sewing the side seams together and then using the 2 layers as if they were one piece of fabric, but I wouldn't actually fuse them. I would just sew them together. And then as time went, I kind of remembered my patchwork dress, which you've seen here. And what happened with the patchwork dress is that one side of the dress grew with wear and, with time, more than the lining. And so that created a ballooning effect that was really, really not pretty. And I realized this is a bit too much of a risk for such a high stake dress. And also, actually, if you see normal dresses, the lining and the tulle layer or lace layer on top are not fused together. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to have the 2 layers of the skirt separately, but they need to be together all the way to the bottom of the pockets and the bottom of the zipper. I will put my little schematic here on the side, because yeah, everything needs to be, it's hard for me to explain the structure of this. So I hope you understand that both layers just need to be into the zipper and that you can't get around that, otherwise it just doesn't work. And same thing for the pockets. You couldn't have the pockets only in the lace because, well, first that would be very ugly, and then second, that would not be strong enough. But then you also can't have the pockets only in the lining because obviously then the lace is stopping you from putting your hand inside. So for that reason, they need to be together all the way to the bottom of the pocket and the bottom of the zipper, but then they can be separate from underneath that. What I will do to prevent any growing after they are attached is that as I'm cutting them today, I will hang them so that hopefully all the stretching that needs to happens in the first part now when I'm making the bodice, and by the time I come and make the skirt, it's all good and it doesn't stretch. I think the lace I will actually not hem, I will just cut it because that's what you do with lace. When you have a small lace, what you can do is follow the design of the lace, but here the lace has a very big design and I think it's going to look much better to have a straight line that follows the hem of the lining. So you will obviously see the fabrics as I sew, but the cotton satin, we needed 6 meters of it, that was about 80 euros, and the lace I needed 3.5 meters of it, and that was 84 euros. And then with the thread added to that, we had a total of 167 euros just for the fabric. So there's going to be a couple of notions to be added, and then I think the final dress will cost about 200 euros for my friend. By the way, I know I always say it, but it bears repeating, this pattern, the Lisa bodice and the circle skirt, I don't have any commercial rights to them, so I can't start making a business, making wedding dresses out of them and make a profit out of those. I am making this for a friend and not as part of any business that I'm doing, and you should not use a pattern that you have only home usage rights for in a commercial way. I like to repeat it because never said enough. So yeah, I think that's everything that's important said. Now you can come along with me and we shall cut this dress and then sew it and make it. I hope it goes well. I really hope it goes well. I hope nothing goes wrong. Oh my god, I'm crossing my fingers so bad. I'm really a mix of like extremely excited and I'm sure I will be very relieved once it's worked and it's pretty and it's a success, because yeah, it's a high stake project, this one. Okay, so narrating Noémie that you just saw had just made the first 2 toiles. I want to take you back just a little bit to the clips where I'm making those toiles. I first want to show you this. I know you've already seen it if you watched my video, How Much Can I Sew in a Week, that came out in May. But honestly, the way Milo always checks under the couch with me, like he's actually helping, it's just too much. I just love how he really, does he really think he's helping? I don't know, but it's just so cute and I always find it very, very cute as a video clip. So I thought you needed to see this again. Then fun times. I use 3 bed sheets for this first toile, and ironing 3 full bed sheets is a lot of ironing. And then obviously Milo was very happy to sit on all of the offcuts. So when I cut my fabric, I just throw all the scraps in a pile next to me. Here I have particularly a lot, but it's because it's bed sheets, so everything that's around and elasticated I can't use. Normally when I cut proper fabric, I don't have so much leftovers. But here, a very nice pile for Milo to guard, clearly. And still from my Everything I Sewed in a Week video, you can see me setting up and reading the instructions and starting to sew. Let's do this. And first I did the skirt, which was kind of the easy part. It had a very good swish swoosh factor. I was very happy with it. Then I started on the bodice, had a little cookie break. It was a lot emotionally, so it was also, I don't know if you can tell from the clip, but it was so grey. As I'm editing this, we are mid-June. It's so grey again. Where's the sun? Sorry, not topic of the video, but where's the sun? Then I'm reading the instruction, making the most of being on the couch a little bit because I'm going to have to go back at my ironing table. Yay! ironing, fun time. Then I'm trying the bodice on. And there I was excited because I'm like, okay, I can see where we're going. This is going to work out. Quite happy. So full of motivation, let's go and attach the skirt to the bodice. That's not so difficult, also because I didn't even bother with attaching the lining properly because it's just a toile. So then I tried this on and I was like, oh my god, I am such a princess. This is so pretty. I love this. Like all the good vibes trying this on at this point. Then I added the zipper. Also, because it's a toile, I was like, if it holds and shuts, it's perfect, it's good enough. I don't need to like make it perfect. So it was very quick. Toiles are really fun actually, because you don't need to do anything perfectly. And then I could finally try it on. And here, not going to lie, those are bed sheets. I felt like a Disney princess. I was really, really happy with those. Not on camera, but I told you about it. First fitting of the first toile, and then I started the second toile, which you can differentiate very easily because it is green. And also there's no skirt to that one, so it was just a top. It was mostly to chop the shoulders off, as I explained, and also to make the waist a lot narrower because it was a little bit too wide to start with. So here we go. I started with my trusty projector, and what I did is that I traced on paper. If you've watched my projector video, it's a technique I've talked about a little bit, and people in the comments have also said that they like doing this, so clearly I'm not alone and I'm not crazy doing this. But so instead of cutting directly from the projection, I retrace using the projection, and then I can use a paper pattern afterwards like I would a normal paper pattern, and it's a bit more helpful if you need to do modifications like I needed to do here. So I traced, and then I literally could not fit the fabric for the lining and the lace for the skirt on my table, so I had to move to the office. You have to picture that during the whole time, Milo is behind the door that connects to the living room, crying and crying because he has been locked out and he's not allowed to come with me. But you can imagine that I don't really want him to step all over the fabric. I'm trying to cut very precisely. That clip took over half an hour, and like it actually stopped automatically because my camera was like, this is too long, I don't film anymore. But so cutting the skirt took a long time. So I had to do that on the floor. Really not my favorite way to cut, but obviously those are big pieces as well, and there was just really no way around it. Like if I wanted this to happen, it had to be on the floor, sadly. I also didn't want to put the pieces one facing up and one facing down, which would have saved me quite a bit of fabric. But because I had a satin, and I was like, I don't know if the way the light hits the satin is going to change if it's up or down, and I didn't really dare to mess with that. So this is why I have a fair amount of fabric waste. I have a lot of scraps from this project of like super weird shapes. I'm obviously going to try to use them, but if you're wondering why I'm cutting it in this shape, it's because of the satin weave. I didn't want the light to look different with one way or another. It's underneath the lace anyway. I'm probably being nitpicky at this point, but as you have gathered by now, I wanted this to be perfect. And then I installed the lace, which was also such a beast, so much lace. And honestly, it just took, this is the moment Milo has escaped and is coming to check what I'm doing. Basically, in the end, I had Francesca help me because if I was moving one corner, the other corner was moving, and having me pulling on one side and her on the other just solved everything, and it went much quicker and much easier. And then I could cut the lace. And yes, this lasted for so long that I had to turn the light on because the night was falling on me. This is how long it took to cut this skirt. Yeah, once it was cut, I thought it looked absolutely gorgeous. I could kind of see where we were going. The lace is truly beautiful, so yeah, very dreamy and very excited about this. Excited to see how it's going to all turn out. And we are back sewing, my friends. I'm apparently very tired. Great. Now I'm awake and I'm using my Schmetz needle. So those are more expensive needles that I normally use. I normally just use the one that are available at my haberdashery. But those ones are supposed to be the best. So that's why I use those for this project. So what you can see here is that I am marking my dot with chalk, and I will talk about that later on, but in the end it was not a great idea I thought it was. And yes, there was yellow chalks left in my dots. It drove me a little bit nuts. I also, clearly at this point you're going to see that I was going a little bit crazy, but my water erasable marker was a little bit visible, you know, in see-through. You can see how see-through the fabric was. And so this one that had the water erasable marker kind of distorted when I erased the water, so that one became the back. And then I decided to be a little bit wild and not to interface the front. But as you can see here, I found that the interfacing was so visible. I don't know if you find it so visible seeing it here, but I found the interfacing too visible and I was not comfortable with that. And then there was matching the dots, and yeah, I will talk more about this at the end, but this was also quite a headache. As you can see here, I'm playing with 0.5 centimeter, and here I'm sewing the dot. And when I finished my dots, they were like 2 millimeters different. I tried to fix it and I ended up making it worse. So the unpicker came about. I explained this more in details in the final note, but lessons learned here: better is sometimes the enemy of good, and this fabric did not like to be unpicked too much, so at some point I just had to leave it because otherwise I could really have damaged the fabric. And we can see that everyone is not experiencing the same level of stress with all of this. Here is my bodice. I was making progress, but this is not high enough. So we have half a situation, but also it'll be fine. But thank God I stopped where I did yesterday, because I would be not loving life right now if I had to fix what I have to fix now yesterday. Because yesterday I was like, oh, I'll just finish the bodice, attach the sleeve, blah, blah. And I didn't attach the sleeves in the end. I was going to do it just now. And I clearly made a mistake when I transferred the changes to the pattern piece, because I'm missing 1.5 centimeters on each side, so the raglan doesn't come and like meet all the way up here, and same in the back. So just a bit annoying, because as it's projector sewing, so I'm going to get my projector back out, reproject the piece, retrace the pattern of the sleeve. Like, luckily it's just a small sleeve, so it's fine. And this time what I'm going to do is keep the sleeve pattern, compare with what I've done, and yeah, redo the modification. But what I have on the pattern piece I have here is that I've chopped the whole thing, so I can't see where the original sleeve was, so I can't really see what I've done wrong. So I need to retrace the original one first and redo all the modification one by one. So it's not going to be too much work, and this is where I'm really happy I planned for a tiny bit leftover fabrics. Obviously that's the sleeves, so that doesn't need much, but you know, if I had counted just enough fabric right now I would be panicking, because I took everything they had left at the fabric store. So going to retrace the sleeves, and it's just a bit annoying because I thought I would finish the bodice today, and now with the sleeve thing I might not, but at the same time I'm not too stressed. I'm going to spend the weekend chipping away at this dress, so yeah, let's go and see what's going on there. So as planned, I'm taking my projector back out, I'm rechecking everything, and as I'm checking everything, I can't find anything that I did wrong. I look and look and look, and I'm like, I did it well. What's wrong if I didn't make a mistake? And I rechecked, I relooked on the video tutorial that Gertie has available with the pattern. And watching the video tutorial, I see that she also has a discrepancy in her seams, and I feel like maybe that should have been in the instructions if the seams are not meant to meet at the edge. But yeah, like one more headache and one more thing that took a lot longer than I assumed. It's really the thing, you think I've made a toile twice. I've made this bodice twice by now. It's the third time I made the bodice. I thought I'd be able to do it quite quickly, but no, it was a lot. You can see my frowny face. I am focused.
Oh my god. And then I pricked myself with a pin and I was just like, let's not put any blood on this white dress. When it came to the neckline, I put a ton of pins in and I didn't want to put any marker to mark the center point, because by that point I was like, everything shows, I don't want anything that's going to show. So I used the pins, as you can see the second row of pins, I used that to indicate to me where the middle was. A little bit risky, but by that point I was so scared of damaging this thing, I didn't know what else to do. I never wanted, how do you call that, ham? Like an ironing ham or a sleeve roll or all of those fancy things, but having to do everything on the tip of my ironing board, you know, the tip that's a little bit more pointy, had to do everything on there. I don't know, I was like, oh, that's why the fancy ironing tool exists. I never really cared for them, but today I can see why. And we are back at work, and the next headache was the elastic within the sleeves. So you have a little bit of clear elastic in your seam allowance of the shoulder, and that's not to create any ruching, it's really just to create a tiny bit of tension so that your sleeve holds better onto your shoulder. But I couldn't, for the life of me, get the same small amount of tension on both sleeves. And you don't want a sleeve more ruched than the other side. And so I looked on the left, and I looked on the right, and then I tried to match the left, and I tried to match the right, and I read it. I don't even want to count how many times I read this. It's really, I think it really shows you how much I was overthinking everything, how much I wanted everything to be perfect, and every step up to the little elastic in the sleeves I redid until I was satisfied. And even when I left it, I didn't feel satisfied. I always wanted it to be better, but at some point you have to move on, like the clock is ticking. And yeah, spent so long on those sleeves. And this is where I understitched. Yay, everyone's favorite step. I mean, it does help to have a very nice finish. And more ironing. At this point, I think I was really freaking out. And I do want to apologize to Francesca, who had to bear me when I was really not in a good mood by then. I was trying it on myself, but obviously my friend had a slightly different shape, and I felt like everything was wrong, and really I was having a tough time. I felt like the dots were wrong and getting pretty in my head about it. The pattern has a really fun method where you sew the sleeves hem in a way that everything's enclosed in the lining. It looks really good at the end, and here you can see me trying to press those tiny sleeves opening. My god, some fancy ironing tools would have been appreciated now. Look, this is really good because I almost bought a €300 course of wedding dresses thing like last time.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, don't know if I like doing this.
Yeah.
I apparently forgot to mention this, but I actually put a tag in the dress that says handmade by Noémie, and the tag is actually written in blue. And so even though it's not the big day dress, I found it very sweet to have a little something blue sneaked in the dress, and that it had my tag and had my name in the dress. Originally, I wanted to attach it at the front of the waistline in the lining, but the fabric ended up being so see-through, even with the 2 layers, that you could really see the tag. I had to unpick that neatly, and I ended up putting it on the back of the pocket. This way, you really couldn't see it because the whole pocket would be in front of it. But so I did manage to sneak in my tag that said handmade by Noémie, which was quite nice, and to have a little something blue in the dress.
And then we started the skirt, so made with my method, with the French seams in the pocket, and then underneath the pocket, as I have explained already, the lace is detached. It was fun to work on the skirt because the lace was so pretty, also difficult to work with, but really pretty. And just looking at it twirl, that brought me joy, that gave me hope that it would work out.
Okay, I need to not talk for too long because it's quite late and Milo is pretty pissed off I'm delaying dinner right now, but I've just finished the dress and I really have to tell you about how it feels like right now because it just felt hard for so long and just I spent the whole time being like, wow, like just feeling so worried that it wouldn't be good enough, that I would give something to my friend and feel like the money she paid for the fabric was just like too much for the quality of what she got. But like the moment I attached the skirt to the top, it really all came together and it's so pretty. And it's really weird because I don't want to show you photos before the video comes out, but the video comes out in like so long. So I'm like, so I sent a photo to a friend from school and I was like, look at this invisible zipper. It's the most invisible zipper you've ever seen and it's like perfectly aligned and I'm so happy. And she sent me this with her husband. That's so nice. I was like, I just need the crowd to appreciate the work that I've done. And yeah, it's crazy. I've really spent the whole weekend on this, really sewing the dress in itself, well, cutting and sewing the dress from Monday to Sunday now is what I have been doing. And now all that needs to be done is all the finishing, so the hem and finishing the lining, because the lining is sewn on the neckline and everything, but needs to be sewn all around the zipper and all around the waistline. So yeah, but I just wanted to kind of record, because I haven't done much talking live on the moment, like while sewing during this vlog, because it was quite stressful. Like I just found it stressful and I didn't really have the energy to vlog, but I wanted to film this moment now where it's all coming together and I'm like, that's a damn beautiful dress. And I'm very happy and I'm getting very proud and very happy to be presenting this to my friends. So time to tidy all of my sewing stuff away. I'm at the same time like super happy and I'm like, never again, like I never want to see you guys again. I had the same when I finished some of the shirts. I was like, I just don't want to sew anymore ever again. Now let's go have dinner. I'm really hungry. Okay, so the wedding dress is finished, it's delivered. I have my notes here and I have so many notes. I'm going to really tell you everything as it is, and I don't want to sound negative in this video. I just really want to tell you the reality of how this was. And it was stressful. Most of the time it was a stressful process. It's because I really care, and so I feel stressed. It doesn't mean that I wasn't happy to do it for my friends. So just to take things with a pinch of salt, like I know I'm not going to be like, whoa, so cool, so nice, and I don't know, I feel like I'm not going to be like super positive, but I've learned a lot and I want to share with you what I've learned, and this goes through being honest with you guys. So this is what I'm going to do today. If you just wanted the success story, then don't come here because I like to share it as it is. First, the sewing pattern from Gertie actually comes with the lap zipper, which I didn't think was a really good look. It's probably because I'm also like not super familiar with them, and so I found that the lap was not really flat on the zipper, and that, I don't know, I just found it quite visible and I wanted the dress to be super sleek. So talking with my friend, I suggested that we would put an invisible zipper in, knowing that they are less sturdy and that invisible zippers are more prone to breaking than a proper zipper that would be under a little flap. But knowing that it's a special dress that she's going to wear only the one time, I think it was worth it. She has to be pretty careful around the lace because obviously you don't want the lace to get caught in the zipper, but I think it was the right call. It really looks absolutely beautiful. When I finished this invisible zipper in the dress, I kind of wanted, I mean, I did send photos to several of my friends being like, please, how invisible is this invisible zipper? Like, so proud. So that's what we did, but that was veering off the original pattern. And also kind of a sad chat, so I tried water erasable pen, but the water erasable pen was not ideal because the satin was a bit fussy with water, and you would see where you would put water on it, like it dried different, and I was like, okay, don't want to play with that. I tried a heat erasable pen, but it definitely left a mark, kind of a shiny mark on the satin, so I was like, okay, not that. So I used in the end my yellow chalk that I use at school, and it's crazy because I complained so much about having to use them at school, and then in the end I used them in my own sewing, which felt like crazy. And I was like, okay, perfect, you put the chalk, it kind of rubs off, like all good. What I had not tried in all of the tests is the chalk. If you leave it on for a while, so you like do all of your marking and you sew the next day, it kind of, I guess, seeps into the fabric. And to be honest, when I gave her the dress, it's something I couldn't see anymore, so maybe it had faded or maybe it's fine. But when I was finishing the dress, I was like, if you go like this close to breast darts, which you probably shouldn't anyway, but you see what I mean? I was like, you can see like yellow lines in the darts, and that was making me quite upset. Because in the end, the heat erasable one fully went away, it's just that it left a shiny mark, but a shiny mark on the wrong side of the fabric in the dart would still have been less visible than like yellow seeping in. I think it was fine by the time I gave it to her, but it was something that kind of like really gave me a headache. Another option would be to put a basting thread in and to mark where you need to go with the basting thread, but then it's difficult to remove. There's no perfect solution, but just so you know, I used a chalk and I don't think it was the best solution in the end. I had a pretty tough time matching the darts to the actual apex of her bust. The pattern was clearly drafted for an apex that wasn't exactly placed where her was, and you could see that in the darts that were coming here on the... So she had darts here, also darts at the shoulders and on the back, but on the chest, on the front, she had darts here on the side and then the ones here on the bottom. And the one on the bottom were kind of pointing 0.5 centimeter too much away this way compared to her actual apex. And because they are cut out darts, they're not just like the normal ones that I've always worked with, and so they were quite tricky to move. That is something I'm really happy with. It was a big victory to actually make those darts align with her apex. But it took a lot of thinking, like it was really a hurdle to get over. I don't know if it's true or if it's my head. That's also the thing, like, you know, when you overthink things and you spend so much time like looking at it from way too close, you start to go potentially a bit crazy. But I feel like I've ironed the tip of those darts so much that I've maybe distorted the fabric there a little bit. I don't know. I spent so long on it and I'm not super happy with the finished result. Yeah, when I did those darts, I was also 2 millimeters off on one of them, like they were not exactly the same length, and I tried to redo one of them so that they would be exactly at the same length, and by redoing it I made things worse. I had to unpick the whole thing I had redone, and I was like, I need to stop here, because if I mess up again I will just have to recut the bodice, because that satin did not like to be sewn on and unpicked too much, like it would really show, and I really had to like massage the fabric back into place so that you couldn't see the little stitch marks. That was like, okay, let's not trying to make perfect the enemy of good. 2 millimeters difference between the darts is fine. I couldn't solve it the first time, and it would have made me redo the whole thing if I had failed the second time. So I was like, going to leave it there. Another thing I have done, because one thing we wanted was for her waist to be really well defined, is that I have actually interfaced all around the like bottom here of her waist so that the fabric wouldn't stretch, because when we did the toile with the bed sheets, that's something we really saw, that the fabric was giving a bit of stretch, and we really wanted her waist to be defined. In the end, it's like not even that defined. I don't understand. I gave her 1 centimeter of ease and it still looks a bit baggy almost at the waist. I was hoping that interfacing it and everything would make it stiff enough and that would work, but yeah, it still looks a little bit baggy at the waist. I don't know how. Maybe 1 centimeter of ease is still too much, but I wanted her to be able to sit without, you know, choking, because if you don't have 1 centimeter of ease at the waist, when you sit, if your fat shifts a tiny bit, like you do need to be able to breathe. So I don't know, that's the call I have done. But when she's standing, you don't have the like really, really nipped in waist that we were hoping for. And I don't know if you can reach it and have enough ease to sit comfortably without maybe a stretch fabric. Then, you know, if it's not stretch, you do need a bit of room to move. One thing I'm really happy with is that I kept the 2 toiles intact, because an option when you make toiles is to then unpick them and use the toile as your pattern piece. And I'm really happy I didn't do that, because in the end, having the toile that I had all of my markings on and that I tried on her was really comforting when I was actually doing my final piece, and I could measure things on the toile and measure it on my final piece and be sure that it was fine. If I had unpicked the toile to use the toile as my pattern pieces, then I would have lost this ability, and I think it would have been very stressful to not be able to double check things over and over again. I think my biggest learning in making this dress here is that I would want a millions more fitting. We did it in 2 fittings, so twice fitting the toiles, and then she came to pick up the final dress, and I think that made it a bit more stressful than it could have been. I didn't want to make a comb a million times, like I thought it was possible, but now in hindsight, like just always want to say, like, it's not that she didn't want to comb, it's just I didn't realize it's something I needed. If I were to do this again, I think I would want more fitting to feel more comfortable, because there's moments where I was like, oh, now there's just like praying that it works and hoping. But it's obviously quite a stressful situation to be in, to have to just trust. So all that to say, I was quite happy that I went down the route of not using my toiles as the pattern pieces, because it allowed me to have them and to use them as a checking point constantly when I was doing the proper dress. For the hem, the pattern actually wants you to just overlock the bottom edge and then to turn it over once and to sew that. I personally find that quite sloppy as a hem option. I really don't like it. There was no way I was doing this on a wedding dress. What I was originally planning to do was a double fold and then hand sew it all. But actually when I hand sewed around the zipper, I saw that really, because of the satin, you could see every stitch, like even hand sewn, they were not invisible. And I was like, if it's not going to be invisible, it's not worth doing it by hand. It's not going to be prettier. If anything, it might be uglier, because at least a straight line on the machine is straight. When your hand stitches, like I can't do them super regularly, and I feel like, I don't know, I feel like they're more jarring than a stitch line on the machine. So in the end, I did double fold and then stitch line with the machine, and I think that was a good call. Even if I had a proper overlocker, I wouldn't want to have done the hem finish that they suggested. I really, really don't like that. And for the lace, I didn't finish it, because lace doesn't need to be finished, and it looked very pretty this way, very airy and very light. What I did is that the lace is 1 centimeter longer than the hem, and I think that looks very pretty. For the pockets, I used my methods for the French seams, and I think that worked quite well. The only issue is that the pockets ended up being a tiny bit tight for her, and because they were made with a French seam, there was no way I could let them in. So she can put her hands in, but it's definitely not a comfortable way to go in. It's a bit annoying. They were also tight on the toile, and I had marked which side was the widest, but even the widest, like, it ended up not being the most comfortable. It's always a trade-off, because if you have big pocket holes, then obviously it could gape on the sides and everything, but it's also like here it's a bit tight. That's one thing that's not perfect on the dress. If something has to go wrong, I would prefer the pockets to be a bit tight than something else, because here that's just like your comfort of putting your hands in, but so that's all right. I think on the inside, the fully French seamed finish looks really nice. It's just a bit sad that that I couldn't just be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll give you like an extra centimeter, let me unpick quickly and you'll have your pocket like opened more. I couldn't do that. A note on the charmed circle skirt. Honestly, if you have already done the circle skirt, when you look at the circumference of your waist and you draft that, and then you do the length and everything, and I mean, you know, the like draft it yourself straight on the fabric type of thing with the circle skirt. This one is a free pattern, and honestly it has a little bit extra. The waistline is not just a circle, and your waistline is also not just a circle. You actually have different volumes in different places, and I love that this pattern accounted for that. I thought it was really well done. It has pockets, even though the pockets opening are a bit too small. I just want to say it's a free pattern, and they also have the double skirt if you really want a lot of swoosh. They also have the double skirt as a free pattern, so there's something I want to shout out. Even though it's definitely something you can make on your own, I think the pattern has definitely a little bit of something extra, and if you want to do a circle skirt, I really recommend that pattern. And for the skirt, it was really funny because I was like, oh, a circle skirt, like that's done like this, like such a quick make. It was not such a quick make when you make it with French seams, with pockets that have a French seams on them, and with the double layered, because after the pockets and after the zipper, the lace layer had to be French seamed separately. So I had to French seam the 2 layers and did the pockets and everything. It took so long. I never took so long on a circle skirt. I didn't believe you could spend that long, but yeah, if you have 2 layers and all of the bells and whistles, like it takes a while. It takes a while to do it all. Yeah, so I wrote it in my note. I kept being like, it's not working, it's not working, it's ugly, I'm so upset, never again, never again. And then when I attached the bodice and the skirt, it all came together, and I was like, oh my god, it's so beautiful. Really had a moment of like, oh my god, I see where we're going, it's working, it's pretty. I think the lace on the skirt really did a lot of the heavy lifting and really made everything shine. But yeah, having just the bodice, I was a bit in a crisis. All I could see were those dots that were not perfect. But yeah, when I attached everything together, it was such a beautiful moment. I was like, it's beautiful, I'm so happy, it's working. When you are working with cotton satin, gosh, that weave leaves fibers everywhere. I had little bits of satin all over. Because of the way it's woven, when you cut it, like it just ends up everywhere, and I had fiber all over the place, but it's fine, but it's just like one of those projects where you find the project all over your house for a while and all over your dog. One technique I learned at school, that's what I used to attach the lining to the inside of the skirt, and obviously you can sew it with an invisible stitch or something, but what works even better, because here I saw that the satin was so picky, and I was like, even the smallest stitch is going to kind of show, is that I sewed so into the lining and then catching one thread of the stitch line of the waist, and that worked so well, because this way you don't touch the front fabric at all, like nothing that is shown on the front is touched, and you actually work just on the seam line, and that worked so well. So happy I learned that at school, because I think it allowed for such a neat finish on the attachment on the lining. I used to always do a stitch in the ditch. It was never perfectly in the ditch, and it was never clean, and this was so clean. I was very happy. It was pretty hard to hem without my friend there. I think my preferred method is to put them in the dress after it had time to hang and, you know, stretch the way it needs to stretch. You put them in the dress, you have a yardstick, you mark where you want the length to be, and then you make them turn slowly and mark all around the dress. That's really my favorite way to hem. No, I didn't have her on hand. We had decided that I would measure from the waistline, but in the end I found that was such a complex way to hem. I don't think I will do that again. It was also tricky because we didn't have the right petticoat on hand, so anyway, we were doing it by length. Here I was every time measuring the length we had said from the waistline, but actually I think the waistline is not fully straight, and it's not that it's not fully straight, but the hem is curved and the waistline is kind of like flat. I don't know, I can't explain. It felt funny, it didn't feel like the right way to do it. I had nightmares for a while afterwards being like, it's not even, it's not working. So I don't think I would do it that way anymore. Like, I would insist that I need to see the person. Like, again, it's not that she didn't want to, it's me. I thought I could do it this way, and then I was like, I don't know, it feels like it's not fully right. It worked. We have a hem that worked, but it's not the way I felt the most comfortable. And hemming the lace afterwards, so what I did is I simply draped the lace on top of the lining and then chopped, like eyeballed 1 centimeter longer. The lace was so shifty. There is one place at the back where I think the lace had kind of moved, and in the end the lace is on 1 centimeter longer and it kind of meets the hem, which makes me a bit upset. But I think the front looks good. I know I did my best, but the lace was so hard, so beautiful, but so hard to work with. That's all of my notes for now. I will reserve my final judgment of the dress when I see the photos of my friend at her wedding. And the reason is, I spent so long on this. I spent a whole month working on this dress. And I think when I spend so long living and breathing the project, it's hard for me afterwards. I feel like I could have done better. It's hard for me to let go of the small imperfections, and I think I need a bit of time. And when I come back to it, generally I feel much better. So I don't want to kind of give my feedback now, because I'm just going to be like, oh, the dots and the things and the layers of the bag, it goes like this. It's not the final words I want to say about this dress. So I want to give myself time to accept that it was a big challenge. And thank you so much to my friend who accepted to give me such an important job and to just trust that I could do it. And I learned so much. Like, I think, you know, there's like what I learned at school, but then what I learned doing this, like, I'm so happy I got to do this project. But it was intense as well, like it just is. And it's also because of my personality. I want to do things well, and I cared a lot, and I do want to do something slapdash. So I am going to give myself a bit of time to see how I feel about it after I see the final photos. Okay, it's time to wrap up this video. We are a whole 2 months later. I delivered the dress a month before the wedding, and we are now a month after the wedding. So for the time for the photos to come out and everything, but also for time for me to feel okay with how the dress looked. I'm not going to lie, I was really like, I can't film a negative outro. Like, I mean, if it was negative, I would, you know, I would say it as it is. And I think you saw during this whole video that I was being quite honest about the whole thing. But I was like, I'm sure that with time I will feel better about it. And it is true. When I saw the first photos of the wedding, all I could see were the bust darts that are quite pointy. And I couldn't get past that. Honestly, those bust darts were haunting me. And I was just like, I failed. The bust darts are a mess and everything. I also felt quite strongly that the dress wasn't like wow, and that it was more simple than what I wanted it to be in my head. But at the same time, that's the model we choose and that's what the fabric we chose. I kept thinking, oh, I should have taken the viscose satin and would have had a like more intense shine. The issue with the viscose satin, it was really warm white, and that the lace was a cool white, and so we needed the one that was matching the lace. In any case, it took me a while to get used to the fact that this was the dress. I also had this thing where I was like, I'm sure she doesn't like it, and you know, she's saying it's fine, but deep down she doesn't like it. But I had a common friend who was at the wedding who said, no, but like really she liked it. She wouldn't have worn it if she wasn't happy with it. Many people said, wow, this dress fits you like a glove. It looked like it's been made for you. So here you are. I think that it's been a huge learning curve for me. There's definitely a lot of things I would do differently if I were to do this again. And yeah, I'm not like 100% happy with it, because I see those darts and there's a few things I would like to still do better. But globally, I'm really happy I've done it. I'm happy she wore it on the day and she was happy with it. And yeah, it was a beautiful project, but it was pretty intense, as you have gathered from the videos. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was interesting to look at the entire project and everything that comes into making this type of important dresses. I would really like to thank Moxie for tipping me a coffee. Thank you so much, Moxie. This is immensely appreciated. Don't hesitate to like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to come back for more. I'll see you in the next one, and don't forget that you can make anything. Bye!